Hey everyone.
Welcome back.
Welcome to the final episode of this season.
That's right. Assuming we keep them in order, but we likely will.
Yeah. So today we're discussing life planning, and that's huge, and I think it's perfect because it wraps up everything that we've been discussing this season, actually. There's a lot that comes with that, and I think the second that you're in a relationship, it's key to start having those conversations because that's basically how you have an effective, happy relationship. Planning is so important. And I think one of the things that was big for us when it came to planning was communication. So
yeah, I mean, you're no longer just planning your own life.
Yeah.
Whenever you do something, it impacts your partner's life.
Yeah.
So you need to be thinking about that.
Yeah, and I think especially at this stage in our life, how we planned when we were in our early 20s is very different than how we're planning now in our early 30s. And I think we're seeing this in real time now having a baby. I'd say there's definitely been some tension because our planning hasn't been as good. Mm-hmm. So it's been good to kind of just revisit, this is what we need to think through. This is how we communicate. This is how we discuss what a schedule looks like now having a newborn.
And I love that you said that because it's not hey, we plan once and we're experts at it and you're done.
You have to keep reassessing, reevaluating.
Yeah, it's continuous.
Yeah. I would say for us, when it comes to planning, communication has been huge.
Yeah, but maybe why is this important? Let me jump into that a little bit more. I think Kadesi was saying it can create tension.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to be in that perfect relationship with your dream partner, your spiritual everything, that connection that you just have with the person, values align, everything. And then all of a sudden it falls apart. The love, the lust, the passion, everything else just crumbles because you're not able to plan well or you're not spending the time to plan. And so I definitely think planning is a skill. And I hate to take it a step further and call it project management, but at work they call it project management because it's important to plan. And so if you're not good at planning, it's not an excuse to not do it.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity to go out there and say, okay, well, how do I become a better planner or how do we become better planners? Because if we don't plan well, we're going to have tension in our relationship that we don't want and we don't need.
Yeah.
So I think that from that standpoint, super important. And then the other one I was talking about is just the impact on your lives. If you're not able to communicate and plan well, you're not only setting up yourself for failure, but you're setting up your partner for failure. And which ultimately means you're setting up your relationship for failure.
Yeah. And I'd say we both came into the relationship as huge planners, as individuals. I had my entire life planned out. I'd say Kareem, very similar too.
It is not bad necessarily, but it does make things harder because when you get really good at planning, it invites this element of control that you want to have over your life and the outcomes that you're possibly going to have, except you don't have to deal with this unknown variable of what's the other person going to do.
Yeah.
And so I think in the positive sense, we were good at planning. In the negative sense, it's a lot harder to plan with someone else when you're not in control of it. And so planning together as a couple is very different than planning together as an individual.
Yeah. And then that comes back to creating shared goals, which is where the planning.
Are you jumping into the tips?
Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm asking you. I don't know.
No, I'm just talking.
Okay, so keep going. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Do you have?
No, I have my tips, but I'm waiting for your tips to come out first. So I don't want to jump the gun,
I could talk about some tips.
No, finish your thought.
No, it's all right.
I don't want to rob them of that.
We could turn it into a tip. It's all in the same.
Okay, go for it.
Essence. So, yeah, I think some tips would be when you're thinking through planning, discuss your shared values, discuss your shared goals, making that time on a regular. It could be monthly check-ins. Something we like to do too actually is a yearly review. We're actually in the process of working through that now.
I finished the last 3 months last night, by the way.
You can't finish it without me, so that's the whole thing, planning together. It's we went through January. What was a high? What was a low? I think another tip that has been good for us is looking back at the past and saying, what did we learn from that and how can we incorporate it moving forward? Yeah, so those were 2 tips that I had.
Okay, I wrote down 3, so I'm gonna give them to you. Well, the first one is pick the right partner. There's just no coming back from that. And when I say the right partner, I'm not saying find Mrs. Perfect. Like, you need to find, or Mr. Perfect. Like, you need to find Mr. or Mrs. Perfect for you, right? And so I think that's very different than going out and finding what a model partner looks like. And I think two things that really jumped out at me. One is mutual interests. I think if you don't like the same things, like if Cadacia loved to travel and I didn't, or Cadacia loved going out at 3 a.m. in the morning and I didn't, it would just create all this space where you're inviting tension into your relationship because you just don't do these things together.
Also, it's your values aren't aligned there.
That's the second part of it is like, do you have shared values, right? So mutual interests and shared values, and I put them separately even though there's some overlap over them. Because if you both don't value family in the same way, you're going to be like one person's going to want to go and do family things and the other person isn't. And so again, you'll be spending time apart instead of doing things that are naturally together. So tip number one, find the right partner for you. You can't like come back from that. And then the second one I have is, I read this in like Harvard Business School article once, and I thought it was just so spot on, but it was about talking about which of the two of you are having the dominant career.
Oh yeah. That was something I was thinking about too.
And the essence of it is one person in the relationship always will have the dominant career. It doesn't need to be the same person the entire time. Like, it can ebb and flow. Like, one decade might be this person's. It may even just be a year. But having that conversation about whose career right now is more dominant will save some frustration. Because if we said it was Cadacia's job and her job said it's time to relocate, like, there's no question. Like, we're going to go and relocate because this is the career that we're pushing right now, right? Because her career isn't just her career is our career. My career isn't just my career, it's our career, right? You're doing these things for your family at the end of the day, and when you're together, it really is about that wholeness and oneness. And so y'all should be constantly discussing which career is the dominant career right now and which one are we supporting, and then reevaluating, hey, when we go into next year or next month, is it time to like reflect on what that changes? Is there a new opportunity or thing that makes that necessary? So I put that as tip number two, is just like, make sure you're clear about who has the dominant career at the current moment. And that isn't just about money. It's more than that.
I think it goes past career too. It's just roles and responsibilities throughout your relationship, because that can change as well.
Yeah. So my third tip I put, there's no such thing as over communicating. Like, I've never had anyone come to me and say like, man, just stop, you've over communicated already. You know?
I mean, yeah.
Typically the problems are, hey, I didn't know, or I didn't want to read your mind, or I couldn't read your mind, or you didn't communicate enough. There was a communication breakdown. No one ever says that for over communication. So there's no such thing as over communicating. I definitely think there is such a thing as over planning. Right? So I'm not saying over communicate and over plan, but there is this like healthy balance. You do need to plan enough without going over, but you need to communicate more. Because even if there's no plan, saying, hey, there's no plan, that allows the other person to know that the plan is that there's no plan right now. And so
and we've learned this from experience.
Yeah, so avoid the heartache and do that. But I think to the point of like not over planning, you create space for audibles, for flexibility. But at the same time, you want to have goals. You want to know what you're working towards. You want to know which direction you're moving in without it being overkill. So no such thing as over communication is my third tip.
I think one more tip I'd like to add is celebrate your wins and achievements, like big or small. After you've done all that planning, like, you want to acknowledge it.
Yeah, absolutely. But how are we celebrating? This is episode 10 of season 1.
Yeah, so. I mean, we have a whole trip that's coming up.
All right. We're going to make sure during one of our rituals is we cheers, and at the beginning of the cheers, everyone alternates. So we'll make sure during one of our next cheers that we're celebrating.
Incorporated.
There we go, 10 episodes in to our first season.
So I do have some questions that I'm going to leave you with. One of them is, what are the roles and responsibilities that you like for you and your partner when you're trying to execute these plans?
I love that, because I was thinking as I was drafting the planning piece, is like knowing who's leading this. Right? And, you know, in the relationship, when we talked about like the money episode, like one person is going to be better at budgeting than the other person. Maybe in this case, like one person is going to take the lead on planning for family, the other one's going to take the lead on planning for travel. Maybe they're taking the lead on planning all together, but you just need to know what your role is in that. And so
you don't want to do double the work. I think another one is, are we aligned? So really having those conversations, what are the goals? Do we see things the same way? So making sure you're on the same page, just in general.
And then I think also people evolve.
Yeah.
Right? So we may have come into the relationship in our 20s and we wanted to shake that tail feather until 2 a.m. in the morning. But now we're in our 30s and maybe that's not where we're at anymore, right?
Yeah.
But maybe one person is still there. And so what does that look like?
Yeah.
Where are we today and how are we feeling about it? I mean, in an ideal world, you're evolving together.
Yeah.
And you're moving in the same direction, but that isn't always the case.
Yeah. I'm laughing really hard because we had an experience recently where like when we were like back in the day, we really wanted to go out to this place and like have the best time. And then we went to the same place, 5 years ago? And we were like, oh, it'd just be cooler if we just chilled at home, versus going out. And it showed that our values changed and like our interests changed, but we were both on the same page. So it worked out.
We got lucky. I mean, Cadacia was almost swayed to make it happen.
I was like, I could go, but like, I really don't want to go.
So there you go. Are we still aligned? I think is an awesome question.
Yeah. And then the last one that I had is, are we learning from what we did in the past? So making sure that you're reflecting, you're growing from it, and not making the same mistakes you did previously.
Yeah. I like that. And the first thought that came to mind was just some of the weddings that we may have gone to in the past and just having conversations about it.
Yeah.
Were we better off just sending a gift than like making the trip?
Yeah, because those trips involved a lot of planning and it ended up creating more stress and tension for us than us enjoying it. So
yeah, and we could give more than if we weren't present.
Yeah.
So I think that was just the one thought, but applicable in so many different areas and ways. Like, are you having conversations? Is that feeding you? Is it taking away from it? I love that. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Because if you've made it this far, you've gone through the first season. Will there be a second season? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I think we're going to be working through that.
Yeah.
But our intention when we were starting out was just to create conversation, to create space, maybe share some of our own experiences, knowing that our marriage, our relationship is not perfect. And I think we said that in the beginning, and I think it's important to say that again at the end. But there are some things that we think we've done well and that have gone well for us. And to the extent that they're helpful for other people, we want to put them out there and share them with you all. And I think the other piece that is just on my heart to say is that we wanted to use this to also start a conversation and create an invitation for you all to approach us with questions that you all have. To have those conversations and create the spaces for you all, because it's not easy. And I think just from our couples like counseling, the couples groups that we're in, we know that it requires like multiple perspectives. It requires constant conversation and effort to make sure that you have a successful relationship. So I hope y'all take us up on that invitation and just thank you for being a part of this journey with us.
Yep, we appreciate you all. Thank you.
Have a good one. Till next time.
Yes.